The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning or good afternoon, depending on what part of the country you're in. Welcome to the itSynergy monthly Hacking the Human webinar series. We will be discussing the Equifax breach today. Thank you very much for joining us. We have a lot of information to cover today, so I'm going to move relatively quickly so that we keep the webinar to 15 minutes. A couple of ground rules. I will stay on at the end of the webinar to answer any questions. So if you have questions throughout the webinar, feel free to post those into the GoToWebinar question window, and I will answer those after the webinar is over. Also, this webinar will be posted to our YouTube channel, and there will be more information on that at the end. So if there's somebody who couldn't make it today that you think needs to see this information, then by all means, feel free to share that link. And finally, there are going to be a lot of links in today's presentation for anybody that actually attends this presentation live. So if you are listening to this live, I will be sending out a PDF file to all of those attendees sometime later today that has all of the links that we discussed. So don't worry about having to capture those or write them down. Some of them are quite long, and so you'll receive a PDF if you're watching this live with all of those links. So let's jump right in and get started. Why do we do these monthly webinar series? Well, first of all, we've got a couple of studies here. IBM in 2014 found that 95% of all security incidents involved human error. Those were followed up with a couple of studies in 2015, one by CompTIA, found human error accounted for 52% of the root cause of security breaches. And Experian, also another credit reporting agency, we're going to talk about Equifax today. Experian is one of their competitors, found that employees in negligence are the leading cause of security incidents, but remain the least reported issue. So we do these webinars once a month. And our goal is in the next 14 minutes to give you some steps on how to be security smart. And today we're going to be talking specifically about what you need to do relative to the Equifax breach. We do these webinars on the second Thursday of every month at 11:30 a.m. Arizona time. So please feel free, and there'll be sign up information at the end to sign up for next month's webinar. So ready, set, go. We're going to talk about the Equifax breach and what you need to do now. So what's the problem? Why are we talking here? Well, on September 7th, a little less than a week ago, Equifax, which is one of the three major credit reporting agencies in the United States, announced what may be the worst security breach in history. Now, this breach was not the largest in terms of quantity of accounts compromised. That honor goes to Yahoo from a breach a couple of years ago that involved over 1 billion accounts. But in this case, the stolen data set, the information that was stolen from Equifax, contained far more sensitive information than that which was stolen from Yahoo. And that's why many people are labeling this as the worst security breach in history, even though it's not the most accounts. The data that was stolen, we know for sure, included people's social security number, birth date, and address, along with their name. And that was true on 143 million people in the United States. There were also some people in Canada and the UK, which were affected by this as well. We don't know exactly how many. And also, because this is such a fast-breaking story, I didn't even have time to update the slides. There have been some additional information about some information that Equifax was breached on a site they owned in Argentina and had a bunch of information on some Argentinian citizens. And so we don't fully know yet. This is just what we know so far. And then in addition to that, it also included some additional information, credit card numbers, and what Equifax has called personal identifying information on 391,000 US consumers. What was the cause of the breach? Equifax had a public-facing web server which used a particular piece of software, and there had been a couple of security vulnerabilities found in that piece of software. When those security vulnerabilities were found, the manufacturer of that software patched them and released security patches for that. Equifax had not installed those patches. And because they had not installed patches for what appears to be known security breaches, that allowed the bad guys to take advantage of those known security holes in that software and steal the information. So you say, okay, I got it. What do I need to do? So let's start out with, are you included in this breach? Are you one of those 143 million Americans? Well, Equifax has set up a site which you can get at equifaxsecurity2017.com, but there are a lot of reports out there that the site isn't reliable. So there are reports of people who have put in, because you're required to provide your last name and the last 6 digits of your social security number. But there are a lot of people who claim they plug in all zeros and it says they may have been affected. There are also people who plugged in their information on 2 different devices, like a laptop and a phone, and gotten 2 different results. And so even though Equifax has put this site out there to tell you, I don't know that I would rely on that. I think the safe thing to do is just assume that you're included, because everything that we're going to be talking about today are things that are good things for you to do to protect your identity from being stolen, whether you were included in the Equifax breach or not. Now, Equifax has said that they are going to be sending letters via traditional mail, or snail mail as it's sometimes called, to anyone who is impacted, but we don't know exactly what the timeline of that is going to be, and we don't know when you should expect to receive that letter. But in theory, you will eventually receive a letter if you are one of the people that was impacted. And so, should you trust them? There's been a lot of chatter on social media and also the press about some of the things related to what Equifax is doing related to this breach and what they're offering to people. The first thing is, there were a lot of people initially that were saying, don't sign up for Equifax's credit monitoring service, because they had some terms of service when you signed up that made you agree to binding arbitration. And people were concerned that that would prevent you from participating in a class action suit at some point in the future. The Attorney General in New York said that that clause was unenforceable and asked Equifax to remove it. And Equifax has since removed that binding arbitration clause from the terms of service, and have also stated that participating in their credit monitoring program will not waive any of your legal rights in the future. There are other people that are saying, well, you shouldn't enroll because Equifax just got breached, so why are you going to give your information to Equifax? I personally find that attitude to be a bit silly for a couple of reasons. Number one, if you were watching the evening news and a branch of your bank, so let's say you bank with Bank of America or Chase or something like that, and you saw a news story that said, hey, a branch of Chase Bank was robbed today, are you immediately going to go down to the bank and close all of your accounts and store all of your cash under the mattress instead? I don't think so. So just because a branch of your bank gets robbed doesn't mean that you feel that that bank isn't safe anymore. And so to me, it's kind of silly that because Equifax got robbed and this information was stolen from them, that you're not going to enroll in their credit monitoring service as a result. The other thing that I hate to break to you, Equifax is one of the 3 major credit reporting agencies in the United States. And so if you think Equifax doesn't have your information already, I've got some bad news for you, because believe me, they do. And so by holding back your information and not enrolling in their credit monitoring service, you're not keeping your information out of their hands. So the bottom line is, when it comes to this, I think the benefit of signing up outweighs the costs of signing up, which they're giving it for free, but I'm just saying outweighs the risk that may come with signing up for it. So first thing you ought to do is get a copy of your credit report. All 3 major credit reporting agencies are mandated by federal law to offer you 1 free credit report per year. The site where you can request those free credit reports is annualcreditreport.com. What I do is I stagger my requests, and I only request a report from 1 agency every 4 months. So that way, rather than getting 3 credit reports all at once, I will get 1 credit report every 4 months, and that allows me to kind of spread out and monitor my credit reports more evenly rather than getting them all at once. When you do request it, make a note of the date you request it, and make sure you go back to this site, annualcreditreport.com, every year and request from that same agency. So for example, if you go to this site now and request a report from TransUnion, which is one of the other major credit reporting agencies, note for yourself that you requested that on September 14th and return on September 14th of next year to request a new report. When you get that report from the credit reporting agency, go through it very thoroughly. And if there's anything on there you don't recognize, investigate it, figure out what that is. This will help you discover if things have been opened in your name that you don't know about. I would also use this as an opportunity to clean things up. So maybe when you read through this credit report, you realize that there's some department store credit card that you opened 10 years ago. You don't even know where the card is anymore. You haven't shopped there in years, etc. This is a really good opportunity for you to get that stuff cleaned up, contact those companies, and close those accounts out. So step 2 is credit monitoring. This is the site where you can sign up from the free credit monitoring from Equifax. It's good for 1 year, equifaxsecurity2017.com. It's free for all U.S. consumers. So whether you're impacted by the breach or not does not matter. They're offering it to any United States citizen for a period of 1 year at no charge. When you go to this site, you'll click enroll at the top and fill out your information. And then one of 2 things is going to happen. Either it will allow you to immediately complete your application right then and there. So you'll provide them some information, your name, your address, social security number, etc. Or sometimes what will happen, because they are kind of controlling the number of people that can sign up, is it may give you a date that you will have to come back in the future to finish your application. So it'll tell you come back on September 16th and finish your application then. And if you do come back on, if it does tell you to come back, it gives you this website when you do it, but you go to FAQ.trustedidpremier.com and continue at that point. So one of those two things will happen. It'll either let you sign up right away, or it'll give you a date to come back, and then you'll sign up when you come back. So if you sign up for that credit monitoring service, what does it give you? So first of all, recognize that credit monitoring service does not stop people from stealing your identity. And it also does not prevent new accounts from being opened in your name. A credit monitoring service is a lot like a burglar alarm you might have on your house. At some point after, with a burglar alarm, at some point after a crime occurs, the burglar alarm is tripped and you will be notified that a crime has happened at some point in the past. Credit monitoring works exactly the same way. The credit monitoring will tell you after the fact when a new account has been opened in your name, or if someone is potentially trying to steal your identity, but it's not going to stop them from doing it. It's just a notification service, so be aware of that. So if an identity thief has already opened a fraudulent account in your name successfully, it'll tell you that that happened, but it's not going to stop it from happening. And it's going to be up to you at that point to mount a cleanup effort, get that account closed, report your identity as stolen, etc. Next step is consider whether to put a credit freeze on your account. So you got to consider the pros and cons of placing a credit freeze, and that is a very specific term that all three of the credit agencies use, a credit freeze. So placing a credit freeze on your account will prevent new accounts from being opened in your name if the financial institution relies on credit data when opening accounts, which most do. So if you go and apply for a credit card, that credit card company is going to check your credit, and if they do and you have a freeze, they will not be able to check your credit, and therefore you will be denied opening that new account. And so you cannot open new accounts on a credit report that is frozen. However, it will not stop other types of fraudulent activity, such as filing a false tax return in your name, or claiming medical benefits under your name, or various other things that bad guys do. So just recognize that a credit freeze certainly helps, and I believe is a good thing to do, but it's not going to stop all types of fraud. And so that doesn't mean that you can just be lax and not remain vigilant about your identity. It will also not have any impact on accounts that were already open. So all of your credit cards, checking, savings, investment accounts, etc., all of those accounts that are already open are not going to be impacted at all by a credit freeze. So you'll still be able to use those accounts, but also if a bad guy has gotten access to those accounts, they will be able to access those accounts as well. So just be aware of that. A credit freeze will stop you from opening new accounts unless you first go through what's called a thaw process, which can take some time, usually several days. And so what that means is if you are the type of person that likes to go to the department store and open up a new credit card on the spot because they're offering a 15% discount or whatever else, then a credit freeze may not be for you, because you're not going to be able to do that at a moment's notice. Before you can apply for that card, you have to thaw your credit, you have to wait for the thaw to take effect, and then you can go apply for a card. So this is better suited for someone who doesn't seek credit on a regular basis, maybe only every once in a while. And then the other thing that you've got to think about is there is a $5 fee per action with each agency. So there are 3 agencies. So every time you freeze, it's going to cost you $15, $5 per agency. And every time you thaw, it will cost you $15, $5 per agency. And so you've got to think about those fees as well. There's a very good reference site, which will be included in the PDF that will get sent to all attendees, from Consumers Union, that talks about security freeze and talks more about the pros and cons and all the things to consider. So if you are ready to freeze, I'm going to go through these links quickly, but I have the links for all of the 3 major credit reporting agencies here. Those will be in the PDF that gets sent out to everyone who's in attendance. There are a couple of other agencies that you also should consider contacting as well that are not as well known: Innovis and Chex Systems. And those are the sites for those as well. So for sure you want to do it with the 3 major credit reporting agencies, but a lot of people are not as aware of these other 2 agencies where you should also be placing a freeze on your account. So the next step is to set up two-factor authentication, or 2FA for short. And those that have attended our webinars on a monthly basis are very familiar with two-factor authentication, and that's actually next month's topic as well, to talk more about this. So two-factor authentication requires that you know something and have something in order to get access to information. The best example is when you take money out of an ATM. You have to know your PIN number and you have to physically have your ATM card. So the step that you ought to do here is contact all the financial institutions that you do business with, so wherever your checking accounts, your saving accounts, your credit cards, etc., and enable two-factor authentication to access your account. So in order to be able to log on to your account, require two-factor authentication. Most of the companies that do this by using your cell phone number, and then they'll send you a text message with a code. So when you go to log into your bank account, you put in your password, they send you a text message with a code, you have to put in that code, and that's what creates the two-factor authentication. So this is a very important step to keep identity thieves from trying to impersonate you when dealing with financial institutions. So now that all of your information is potentially out there as a result of this Equifax breach, it's important that you kind of up your security game a little bit so that if somebody tries to impersonate you, it's not as easy for them to do it, because maybe they could figure out your password, but hopefully they're not going to also be able to get access to your phone at the same time. And so it makes it significantly more difficult for them to create fraudulent activity. The last step that I recommend you do right away is set up alerts. So the vast majority of financial institutions out there have the capability through their online banking systems to set up alerts. So if we take Bank of America as an example, they have somewhere between a dozen and 24 different alert options that can be set on consumer accounts. So some examples are if a debit card transaction occurs outside the United States, or if a check clears over a certain amount that I specify, or if there's a transfer between accounts over a certain amount that I specify, or even if there's a failed login attempt, etc. So all of these things, you can set up alerts on your account so that when these things occur, you get an immediate alert. And the alerts can be configured to send you an email, it can send you a text message, or it can do both when the alert happens. Now, of course, it depends on who you bank with. Your mileage may vary, and so you need to go into your online banking site and figure out what capabilities are there. But it's definitely something that I recommend you go in and investigate and get figured out and get set up, so that if there is some type of fraudulent activity attempted on your account, at least you're going to know about it right away and hopefully be able to take action very quickly, contact the bank, or change your password, or whatever else the case might be. So those are the 5 things I recommend you do immediately in response to the Equifax breach. Thank you very much for attending today. Our next webinar is going to be October 12th. We're on the second Thursday of every month at 11:30 a.m. and we talk about security-related topics like this every month. It's at 11:30 a.m. Arizona time. You can actually go out and register right now at itsynergy.com/webinar. We're going to be diving more deeply into two-factor authentication next month. So that's one of the things we recommended today, but we'll be talking about it a lot more. Also, I mentioned at the beginning that this webinar will be posted to our YouTube channel in the next couple of days. You can find that at itsynergy.com/YouTube. The link is right there in red. So if there's anybody who wasn't able to attend today, please feel free to send them that link, ask them to subscribe to the channel, and they will get notified when we post new videos there. So thank you again very much for attending, and we look forward to seeing you next month.